Hello, everybody. We're going to be beginning in just a moment. Again, if the audio is weird, I have my phone here for a little bit. If you want to message me to let me know if it's good or not. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me for the last part of our series on Laws of Purim, Hilchos Purim. So far, we have discussed Matonos Lev. Before that, we discussed Mikra Megillah. Now we are going to be talking about a double whammy, Mishloach Mano and Seudas Mitzvah. It actually works together, as we're going to see that it makes sense to be learning about Mishloach Mano and Seudas Mitzvah together. Mishloach Mano is giving gifts to our friends and family and so on, and Seudas Mitzvah is talking about having a Seuda on Purim. And we're going to discuss a few things in this year. First, we're going to be discussing why we give Mishloach Mano, why do we give Shalach Manos on Purim, and through that, we're going to also see what we give for Shalach Manos. The next question that we're going to be dealing with is who needs to give Mishloach Mano, who has to give Shalach Manos. And the third question we're going to be dealing with is leading into the Seuda section is what is the obligation for the Seuda? What is the obligation of having a Seuda on Purim? And the fourth thing that we're going to be discussing is do I need to have bread and meat at my Seuda? If you want to follow along, the source sheets can be found in the bio section. It is a Google Drive, and it should be available for all of you to be able to use. So to begin, we're going to be talking about why do we give Mishloach Mano in the first place. There's two opinions for why we would give Mishloach Mano. One is from the Trumas Hadeshin, and the other one is from the Manos Halevi. So the Trumas Hadeshin says that the reason why we would give Mishloach Mano is because we want to make sure that every single person is able to have a Seuda. So we give them a Seuda worth of food. So we're going to see in source number 1 on the left side, the Trumas Hadeshin says in Siman Kuf Yod Aleph, Nira Tam de Mishloach Manos Hu, that the reason why we make sure to give Mishloach Mano, give Shalach Manos, Kadeshi He Lachol Echad, Lakol Echad, Daiva Safik, Lakayim Seuda Kedina. We want to make sure that everyone is able to fulfill the obligation of having a Seuda properly, which shows the connection between Mishloach Mano and Seudas Mitzvah, and is fitting to be able to talk about Shalach Manos and Seudas Mitzvah in the same shiur. The Rambam goes along with the Trumas Hadeshin and says that there's an obligation for us to have a Seuda. In Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah in Perek Beis, the second Perek, Halacha Tet Vav, he says that there's an obligation to have a Seuda. And because of this obligation to have a Seuda, we also see that we are obligated to give other people the necessities to be able to fulfill that Seuda. So let's read it inside. Source number 2. It says, Kesad Chova Seuda Zo, that how are we obligated? How do we fulfill the obligation of a Seuda? So Shiokal Basar V'Yitakin Seuda Na Kifi Asher Timsa Yado. So we're going to see the source again when we're talking about Seudas Mitzvah. That in order to fulfill it, we have to have meat, and we have and it has to be to the highest level that we could possibly do it. And depending on how much money we're able to put into it. And we see four lines from the bottom. It says the last word v'chein chayav adam l'shloach shtei manos basar o shnei mine tavshil o shnei mine akalin lechavero, that we're obligated to give either basar, we have to give meat, or we have to give some type of cooked item, or 2 items of food to our friend, also known as Mishloach Manos. So we see one side. One side is that we have to make sure that every single person is able to fulfill a Seuda. So we make sure to give it. and we make sure to provide, 2 items to be able to put onto their seuda, onto their table. On the other hand, we see that maybe this is based off of the concept of achdus, that we're all trying to connect together. We're having this opportunity to be besimcha, and we want to connect with everybody around us. The Manos Halevi says that idea, and he gets it from he quotes it or comments on Megillas Esther in Perek Tet, that we start talking about how the rest of the Jews start to fight for their lives and end up killing 75,000 of their enemies, and they don't even take anything, any of the loot or anything like that with them, any of the spoils. So that's what it says in the beginning. Ushara Yehudim in source number 3. Asher b'medinos hamelach nikhalu ve'amad al nafsham v'noach me'ovehem. That the rest of the Jews that were living under this kingship gathered together and they fought for their lives. V'harug b'sonehem chamisha v'shivim aleph uvaviza lo shalchu es yadam. And they killed 75,000 of their enemies, and they didn't even take anything from them. And from there, we're going to see why when we go and celebrate Purim. Beyom shlosha asar lachodesh adar v'nog be'arba asar. So that happened on the 13th of Adar, and we end up resting on the 14th. So yom mishta v'simcha, and we make sure because of that, because we rest on the 14th, we now are besimcha on the 14th from now on, and that's when we go and celebrate Purim. And the Jews in Shushan, so we see the Yehudim asher b'Shushan yikalu b'shlosha asar bo ve'abara asar bo, that on the 13th and the 14th they were fighting. The Noah b'chamisha asar bo ve'aso so yom mishta v'simcha, and on the 15th they rested. So for that reason they go and celebrate on the 15th. So that's the difference between walled cities and unwalled cities as we have it today. Now the part that the Manos Halevi quotes on. Al kena Yehudim haprazim hayoshvim be'arei haprazot osim es yom arba asar lachodesh Adar simcha umishte v'yom tov v'mishloch manos ish l're'ehu. That the Jewish that we see. I'm sorry. Before that, we talk about the villages in the unwalled cities that they go and celebrate on the 14th. And those who are in walled cities are going to be celebrating on the 15th. And what do we do during this period of time? We are besimcha, and we are drinking, and we're we treat it like a Yom Tov, and we also make sure to give out gifts during this period of time to everybody to spread the wealth. So the Manos Halevi comments on this in source number 4, Mishloach Mano, Kizer Romez Kihem Be'aguda Achas Be'ava Ve'achva, that this should be a remez, a hint to this, and it should be like an association to the love and brotherhood that we have for each other. Hefech Masha Amar Asora Mefuzar Mefurad. That and the opposite would be hating each other and separated and dispersed. So what do we do during this period of time on Purim? Mishloach Manos Ish L'Re'eu Kamo Shehaya Aniyim Ki Ish Echad L'Ikael Kol Echad Am Chavero. That it doesn't matter who you are. You could be poor, you could be rich. It does not matter. We all gather together, and everybody is connected, and we give mishloach mano to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, because the opposite of that would be hefech ish sar ve'uyav lashon ramia omer amachad mefuzar. That the opposite would be that we would all be dispersed, that we would all be separated, and we want this to be a time of connection, a time of achdus. For that reason, we're giving mishloach mano to create that achdus. My Rebbe, Rabbi David Hirsch, makes sure to give to somebody who he hasn't spoken to in a very long time, in order to create that achdus once again with that person, for that person to feel a connection once again with Rav Hirsch and also the Jewish people as a whole. So we see that there's 2 possible ways to see why we have to go and give shalach manos. One is for the sake of a seuda. We want to make sure that every single person is able to give a seuda. The other is achdus, that we want every single person to feel connected during this period of time. How do we do that? By giving gifts to every person around, or as many people as we can around us, to feel that achdus, to feel that connection between Am Yisrael. Because of the 2 differences, we could actually see a few practical differences on page 2 of what can be used for shalach manos based on these two opinions of the Trumas Hadeshen and the Manos Halevi, but also what happens in different cases that might affect whether or not you fulfilled your obligation of giving shalach manos. So we give about 6 examples here. This is a chart that came from Rav Rimon's Sefer called Hilchos Purim. It's just titled Purim, but it has a lot of halachot that come up in Purim, and he has it in Hebrew over there, and I put it into a little bit differently with the English, but also more of a check and X type of situation instead of the words. But together we're going to go through the different types of situations that we can encounter that might lead to us, depending on who we follow, might lead to us possibly fulfilling our obligation or maybe not. The first example that comes up is, as written here, someone refuses to accept the gift, to accept the shalach manos. Why would someone not want to accept the shalach manos? So for Damalchas good reasons, we could say that maybe their hands were full, that they didn't want that they didn't have any room to be able to carry, and they say, okay, you could I appreciate it. It's amazing that you're able to give this to me, but I just can't accept it at this time. I don't have the wherewithal to be able to carry it. So based on the Trumas Hadeshen and the Manos Halevi, have we fulfilled our obligation of shalach manos? So according to Trumas Hadeshen, no, because your obligation is to make sure that everyone has a seudah. So you weren't able to give a person their a seudah worth of food. For that reason, you would not have fulfilled your obligation. But on the Manos Halevi, when it comes to Akdus, when it comes to the connection, this person clearly felt connected just by the fact that you were willing to give. So for that reason, you would in fact just fulfill the obligation of shalach manos just from trying to be able to give shalach manos to other people. Let's say the second example that we have, that you anonymously gave shalach manos for whatever reason. You didn't want your name going out there. Have you fulfilled the obligation of mishalach mano? So the Trumas Hadeshen would say yes, because if you gave a seudah worth of food, then it doesn't really matter whether they know who you are or not. You fulfilled your obligation. But based on the Manos Halevi, if they don't know who you are, how are they going to feel connected to you and the Jewish people as a whole? It has to be that they know who's giving it. They're able to put that connection together, and then they're able to feel that connection between you and that person and Am Yisrael as a whole. So for that reason, the Manos Halevi would say, no, you haven't fulfilled your obligation. So the third question that comes up is, what should a person give as their shalach manos? Are they able to give food? Are they supposed to give food, or are they even able to give other types of items? So the Trumas Hadeshen would say it has to be like something like a picture that we have over here. A hamburger has to be some type of food that you would have at a meal to be able to celebrate Purim. The Manos Halevi would say if you hand out Amazon gift cards to people, and that would be providing a connection between you and them. They would be happy and they would feel connected to the Jewish people. Then that would be fulfilling your obligation as well. So we don't do that. I hope no one's disappointed about that. I know we all want our Amazon gift cards, and the kids probably want cool toys, but we still get an incredible feeling of being able to connect with everybody else, even if it wasn't through Amazon gift cards. The fourth question that comes up is, can I give candy, or maybe an apple, as our title is, for our shalach manos? So the Trumas Hadeshen would say that's not a seudah. No one eats candy. I hope no one eats candy as their lunch or dinner. So for that reason, it wouldn't be able to work as part of your shalach manos. But the Manos Halevi would say, who doesn't love candy, and who wouldn't want to be able to have candy? So for that reason, the Manos Halevi would say it's good because it's creating akdus, and that's what matters. It doesn't necessarily matter what you're giving again. So it would work according to the Manos Halevi. The second to last, the fifth question that comes up is, can I give something that they won't eat? Let's say that you know that they don't like a deli sandwich, also in the title. Let's say that you don't that you know that they don't like turkey or whatever it might be. Are you able to give that? Or maybe you don't know and they end up not liking it. They end up not wanting it because it has turkey in there. So does that mean that you fulfilled your obligation of mishloach manos, of shalach mano? So the Trumas Hadeshin would say, no, you haven't fulfilled your obligation because you need to give a Seuda, while the Manos HaLevi would say that you have fulfilled it because even such they would appreciate the gift. And the last one is, can I send it through a messenger before Purim? The Trumas Hadeshin would say no. I'm sorry, the Trumas Hadeshin would say yes, because the obligation is to give a Seuda. And the Manos HaLevi would say no, because again, you're losing out on that connection between one yid to another. So we see the different obligations that come up. We know that we don't necessarily always give food. We always give food, but what kind of food do we have to give? So for ourselves, we should know that it should be something that is cooked or at least ready to eat. And many even say that you should give something that would be good to be able to put on the table for a seuda. And some say that that you could even put a drink. That drink would count as a second item. But most people are strict to be able to say that you should give food, and I think that's something that we could all try to do. So with the time that we have, we're going to go through 3 more topics. So far, what we discussed was why we give shalach manos and what we should give for shalach manos. Now we are going to discuss who needs to give shalach mano, who has to give shalach mano. So the Pri Chadash, the main question is really, are both men and women obligated in giving shalach manos? So the Pri Chadash says that because it says the word ish when we're saying ish l're'ehu, for that reason, women would not be obligated, as it says in source number 5, ein din zeh mechuvar de ish ksiv velo isha. It doesn't say isha, it does not say woman is obligated, it says an ish is. The Shvus Yaakov says, commenting on the Pri Chadash mamish, he says, I don't understand. Many times we see the word ish and we don't necessarily say, oh, it doesn't include a woman. So why all of a sudden over here are we nitpicking to say, oh, because it says ish, it must be talking about specifically a man. So clearly, according to Shvus Yaakov, it doesn't make sense to use that as a reason. The Ramah seems to say that women are obligated in giving mishloach mano, as we see 4 lines down in source number 6, the last word on the 4th line. It says v'isha chayeves b'matanos la'avyonim mishloach manos keish, that a woman is obligated in giving shalach manos and matanos la'avyonim, as we discussed last week, just like a man is obligated to give. V'isha tishlach leisha, and a woman should give to another woman. V'ish leish, and a man should give to another man. And we go and discuss why we shouldn't do it the opposite way around, because of a similar conversation that we had in Matanos La'avyonim about if a man were to give to a single woman, it might be a savik kiddushin, and we don't want to be in that type of situation. So we usually say that a man should be giving to a man and a woman should be giving to a woman. The question then comes up. Let's say a person is married. If a man and woman are married, does each of them have to give their own, or can they join together to be able to give shalach manos? So the Mishnah Berurah says that a woman can join in with her husband to be able to give shalach manos, and the Chayei Adam says that we should be machmir. We should make sure that the woman is giving her own shalach manos, that she is not relying on her husband. It says in source number 7, halfway through, it says v'kasav magen Avram lo re'isi nisharin bezer ve'efshar dafka be'almana aval. This is the important part. Aval isha sheyesh la ba'al ba'ala mishalach b'shvila, that if a woman has a husband that she could give through him, lekama anashim, to however many gives. But nevertheless, you should be machmir, but the door is open based on the Mishnah Berurah for a woman to be included in the husband's for a man and woman to join together to give shalach manos. The Chayei Adam closes that door, as it says at the end over there. Or let's read the whole thing. Gam nashim chayevos b'shalach manos matanos la'avyonim, that a woman's obligated in shalach manos and matanos la'avyonim. Umikol malkum, nevertheless, isha sheyesh la ba'al sumchas sheba'lo shaleh b'shvilah. It seems like a man and woman could join together to give shalach manos together. But ve'eno nachon, but he says that's not the right thing to do. Ela yesh la'achmir, you should be machmir to go and give for each one to be giving on their own. I have a feeling that the husband has his group of people that he wants to make sure that get shalach manos, and that the wife has her set of people that she probably wants to make sure get shalach manos. So for that reason, it's probably going to be covered anyways. The Kav HaChaim discusses a question about whether giving to a katan, giving to a person that's under 13 years old, whether you fulfilled Matanos Lavyonim. He says no. It's just like I'm sorry, not Matanos Lavyonim, though it's also included in that Mishloach Mano had to be fulfilled by giving to a katan. The answer is no, because just like Matanos Lavyonim, you wouldn't be fulfilling that obligation. So to here, you would also not be able to fulfill that obligation by giving to a katan. So at the end of the day, what do we say? That women are obligated to fulfill Mishloach Mano, and men as well are obligated to fulfill Mishloach Mano. If a woman is married, they're able to join together to be able to if a man and a woman are married, then they're able to join together to give Shalach Manos together, Mishloach Mano together. Let's say that you're giving to a whole family. This is another question that comes up. If you're addressing to a whole family, you should try to make sure that there's 2 separate foods for each person. And for children who are under the age of 13 or 12, they should follow along with their parents to see the importance of giving Mishloach Mano, but they're not necessarily obligated themselves. So the 2 discussions that we had in the Mishloach Mano world is why do we give Mishloach Mano? So we say 2 possible reasons, either for the sake of Seuda or for the sake of Achdus, and it leads to larger conversations of what you can give, how you could give, what type of situation would mean that you're still obligated in different types of situations. And we end up saying that you should give 2 cooked foods or 2 foods that are edible right away, and even preferable for it to be something that you could give that could be used on the table itself. Other conversation that we had about Mishloach Mano is who is obligated to give. Are both men and women obligated to give? We say yes, both men and women are obligated to give. If there's a husband and wife that want to give together, they're able to give together. And like I said, you probably there's people that both of you want to give to both. So it'll end up covering ground. So now we're going to go into the conversation of Seudas Mitzvah, that we have the obligation to have a meal, and we're going to discuss family, friends, and so on. We have an obligation to have a Seuda on Purim. So what is the obligation of having a Seuda on Purim? So we see, I think we're up to now page 3. Page 3. So we see it comes from the Gemara, this obligation to have a Seuda on Purim. It's really quoting a pasuk to be able to derive this idea, as it says in source number 11 in Maseches Megillah, Dav Zayin Amud Beis. Amar Rava says, Seudas Purim she'akla b'layla lo yatsa yedei chavaso, that if a person tried to have a Seuda at night in order to fulfill their obligation of a Seuda, they haven't fulfilled it. It has to be in the day. My time, but what's the reason that has to be in the day? Why can't it be at night? Because it says Yemei Mishtet v'Simcha. It says that in the day that you should drink and you should be b'Simcha. And from that we learned that we're going to see from the Rambam in a bit that we learn from the idea of Mashta v'Simcha that means that we should be having a Seuda. So let's continue. It says Ksiv Rav Ashi Hava Yaziv Kameh de Rav Kahana. It says in the parentheses de Rav Kahana that Rav Ashi was sitting with Rav Kahana. Nego Vela also Rabbanan, that they were waiting for the rabbis to come and join them. Amar Le, and Rav Ashi said to Rav Kahana, my time also Rabbanan. What's taking so long for the rabbis to get over here to be able to come to us? Dilma, treated with Seudas Purim. So Rav Kahana answered back, maybe they're very busy having a Purim Seuda right now. So Amar Lei said back to him, V'lahava Evshar Lamekla Be'orsa. And why can't they just why can't they just have it at night? Or who said really that they can't have it at night? Amar Lei. So again, Rav Kahana said back to him, Lash Shmiya Lei Lamar Hada Amar Rava. So I guess Rava learned out from his master this ruling, or you didn't hear from Rava this ruling. Seudas Purim she'akla b'layla lo yatsa yedei kavaso, that Seudas Purim cannot be had at night, and you would not be obligated in your what's it called, in your Seuda if you did it at night. Amar Le, as we learned, that Rav Ashi said back to Rav Kahana, Amar Le. In really, that's the case that Rava really learned this out. Tanamine, mine arba'in zimnin v'dami le keman demanach bekise. So he heard this 40 times from his rabbi in order to make sure that they would really know that this is the halacha, that this is the thing that we have to do during the day. We have to have a seuda during the day and not at night. It's also good for us to know 40 times. That seems like a lot of times, but really that's if we go over something over and over and over again, whether that's notes for a class that we might be taking, or whether that's a piece of Torah, or whether we're preparing for an exam. I know that even doctors have to take exams over and over to make sure they know the material and that they keep their I don't know if it's their license or a specific thing that they have to do. So if you go over something over and over again, you'll get to know it fairly well. So that's important to note. But also we have a seuda during the day. We see that in the Gemara. The Rambam comments mitzvahs yom yadalid that on the 14th of Adar livnei kfarim ayaros in unwalled cities. That's on the 14th. V'yom tedvav livnei krachim. And on the 15th in walled cities. Lios yom simcha mishta, that you should be besimcha and you should be drinking. What does that mean? Ketzad chova seuda zo, that we have this obligation of having a seuda during that period of time. Sheyokal basar v'takin seuda na'a kafi asher timsa yado, and that what should we be having? We should be having basar, as that'll be our next conversation, and be able to have as much as we can, and as much as we can supply ourselves for this seuda. The Shmuley Aleka jumps in and says in source number 13, v'chayav adam l'smog b'purim v'lehaden b'mine ma'achal umashta, that you should be happy, that you have this obligation to be happy on Purim through food and drinks, as we learn Kediksiv Laws of Purim that you do this during the day, that they celebrated during the day, by drinking and celebrating v'oklin v'shotim v'smechin mazmarin al shulchanam ubebeis chaverehem v'mishloach manos yislerehu. So we see that we should be eating and drinking, and we should be celebrating and singing, as it says al hashulchan. It means at the table. I hope no one is jumping on their tables and in their houses with their friends, as it says. And also they should be giving mishloach manos to those other people. So this is a partnership aleka, because it also says that we should be trying to celebrate with our friends and our family and so on, for the sake of the Seudas mitzvah. The Rav Achai Gaon says why we're doing this. Why are we having a Seudas mitzvah? He writes in source number 14, Vayavan de Beis Yisrael le'achol lishtos bepurim leodos lishabeach lehakadosh baruch hu akol hanisim shasulam. That Am Yisrael is obligated to eat and drink on Purim in order to think and to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all of the nisim that he does for us. So maybe it's worth for our Seuda, when we go to our Seuda, that we should go and maybe think of something, maybe not necessarily a nes, but something that we're thankful for that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for us, and to be able to be besimcha and be able to celebrate and to sing about it at our Purim Seuda. So the Emek She'ela gives a different possible reason for why. That's the netziv of why we have to have a Seuda. Is for the sake of not remembering Mordecai the Rasha. Mordecai. You see, maybe I already fulfilled my obligation. That Mordecai is a tzaddik and that Haman is a Rasha, and that we should be able to forget which one is which. And I think that most people say that the obligation is simply for the sake of the Seuda, to be able to be with family and friends and to celebrate the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved us during this period of time. So at our Seuda, what should we be having? Should we be? Can it be something simple? Can it be pastas and so on, or do we need to be having bread and meat at this Seuda? So we will start with the meat. We'll start with, do we have to have meat at our Seuda? So Rambam in Hilchos Megillah Chanukah, the same Rambam that we've been quoting so far, says that we have to have basar, that we have to have meat at our seuda. As he writes in source number 16, I'm sorry, it's a little bit hard to see it, but it's on the top left. It's hard to see in the red, the dark red. Kesar chova seuda zu, that we have this obligation to have a seuda. What should we have at the seuda? Sheyochal basar v'itakin seuda na kefi asher timsa yado. That the same thing that we've read probably once or twice now. That we should have basar as much as we can provide for this seuda. The Shulchan Aruch comes in a different angle and talks about it from an onain. An onain is somebody whose loved one passed away, but they have not been buried yet, so they're not necessarily obligated to mitzvot. And over here we see that for an onain is still mutter for them to have basar and yayin on Purim, because this is divrei Kabbalah, not necessarily deraisa, but it also shows that there's this obligation still based on the Shulchan Aruch to have meat and wine on our seuda, because he wouldn't have necessarily mentioned it as something that's something to have at our Purim seuda. The Magen Avraham, on the other hand, source number 18, doesn't think that we need to necessarily have basar. We don't need to have necessarily meat at our seuda. As he writes, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from the top. It says, "Psakta afilu b'Shabbos mirsa shelo le'achol basar rishus biyado kol masha katsuv teres rib is zelashon she'eno mechuyev sheyochal basar v'yayin." There's not an obligation to have basar and yayin, to have meat and wine at your seuda. So that's the side of the meat. I definitely encourage everybody to have a nice seuda. And it seems to be that we try to have meat at our seuda, if not obligated to have meat at our seuda. On the other hand, should we be obligating ourselves to have bread at our seuda? So the Rambam seems to say that maybe we don't need to have it. This whole conversation is based on whether or not you would have to repeat ala nisim in our benching in order to go, meaning in order to celebrate Purim, would we have to say ala nisim, and if we forgot, do we have to go back? If we don't have to go back, then presumably it's not necessarily an obligation to have bread in our seuda. But if we say that there is an obligation to go back and repeat Birkat Hamazon, then we would say that it's necessary to have bread also, because why would we make someone go back to be able to say Al Nisim in their benching? It's the same. There's if you didn't know, there's also an idea that when it comes to Rosh Chodesh that we should have bread for one of our meals, in order to be able to say Birkat Hamazon, and also be able to say Ya'alav Yavo in our benching. So it's a same concept, and we're going to go into that right now. Source number 19, Rambam, it says in Hilchos Brachos, it's actually not Perek Beis Halacha Tetvav, it's Perek Beis Halacha Yud Gimel. I apologize about that. It says about, in the beginning, it talks about, if you were to forget for the sake of Rosh Chodesh, you would have to say Ya'alav Yavo, then you would have to go back and say it. It depends on whether or not you got past the fourth bracha or not. And it seems like all the more so when it comes to Purim, as it says halfway through, V'im nisker akar sheyitkal bebracha revius gomer osav ve'eno kozer, that if you pass the fourth bracha, then you would not be able to. Then you cannot just. Then you would have to restart your entire thing. Your entire. I'm sorry. You would not have to restart your entire Birkat Hamazon. When it comes to Rosh Chodesh, v'chein v'chulo shalmod v'chanukah b'Purim, the same thing is applied for Kol HaMoed, and for Chanukah and Purim. Shakok v'lo hiskir ha'inyan b'Birkat Hamazon eno chozer. If you were to forget and not remember to say to say Al Nisim and Birkat Hamazon, then you would not have to go back. So the Rambam seems to be saying that you would not have an obligation to have bread, because if you're not obligated to go back for Ya'alav Yavo, then you would also not be obligated to have to go and have bread in the first place. The Rav Yah, on the other hand, seems to say that you would be obligated to have bread, because you would be also obligated to go back if you were to forget to say Yalav Yavo, and also Al Nisim for the sake of Purim. As it says, Tavlo Hisker shall Rosh Kodesh Bebirkat Amazon in Magzirin Osom Mipnei Efshar Lo Below Achila. That you would not necessarily have to go back for Rosh Kodesh. Aval, ready? Bishabasas v'Yom Tovim v'Chanukah b'Purim she'iev shar lo below achila chozer u'masker. But in those type of situations, for Shabbos and for Yom Tov and for what's it called, and for Chanukah and Purim, be impossible to not do that. So you would have to go back and say it. And it gives, I guess, the summary, you could call it, Perush, Devarim shel oneg sarek le'achol kagon pas. That we say that when it comes to an oneg, that you're obligated to eat food, specifically bread. So it's very clear from the Rav Yah that you would be obligated in having bread for Purim. The Marashal says very similarly to the Rav Yah that you would be obligated in having bread for your Seudah. For your Purim Seudah, as he says halfway through. First, he discusses again for Yom Tov, for Yom Tovim, and so on. If you would have to go back, he seems to say that you would have to go back and repeat your Birkat Hamazon. And then he says halfway through, Kol Shekain, it says Chaf Shin, Kol Shekain Besudas Purim, Shenikva Lamashta V'Simcha Devi'ina Seudah Kivua Bepasu Machzirin Alea. That a person would be obligated to go back, especially for Purim, where it's a time of Seudah, and it's that there's Simcha and so on and so forth, to be able to, and you have to go and have bread, and it's Kavua to have bread, you would have to return for that type of situation. So I would say that it's probably also very kedai, it's very good to be able to have bread. It could be challah rolls, it could be whatever it might be that you would want to have for bread at your Seudah. So what have we discussed? Tonight we discussed for the sake of Mishloach Mano, why is it that we give Mishloach Mano? One possible reason is for the sake of a Seudah, another possible reason for the sake of Akdas, and we go through the different possible obligations. The possible cases that could go on with that. We then discuss who needs to give Mishloach Mano, and we end by saying that both men and women are obligated to give Mishloach Mano. And if a man and a woman are married, they could give it together. Then we discuss what is the obligation of having a Seudah, or what where do we get that idea? We get it from the Gemara that makes it very clear that we have to be having a Seudah in the day, and the Rambam continues to say this, that we have this obligation of having a Seudah. And the reason why we have this obligation, says Rav Chai Gaon, is for the sake of praising and thanking God Kadosh Baruch Hu for all the nisim, all the miracles that He did for us. And do we have to have meat and bread? And it seems best to be able to have both meat and bread at our Seudah. Thank you so much for joining throughout the series. If you would like to listen or to re-listen to any of the Shiurim, they are posted on this account. You could listen to the halachos of Mikra Megillah, Matan Lav Yonim, and here Mishloach Mano and Seudas Mitzvah. Thank you so much again for joining.